talk about the
That's okay. You always think about it as
unfortunate job security that we have.
I do think of it that way sometimes. I say that as a CADC too with the substance use. Well, you're
Yeah.
a CADC as
Yep.
well. Yeah. So
Hmm.
there's always job security with that, unfortunately. There's always going to be people struggling with that.
Hmm.
So, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, I think, just because we do have a lot to cover. Are you
Yeah,
ready? Okay.
I'm ready when you are.
Great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And again, my name is Dr. Serena Wadhwa. I am your host for the Real Talk, the Pendulum podcast. And today I have back Steph Fowler, who was so gracious to agree to come back and talk about this topic that we um, kind of talked about the last time that you were on the
Hmm.
podcast, and then connected again to see how we could bring it back because it's such a important concept and just relevant, as we talked about. So I want to first turn it over to you. This is kind of the framework that you see on your screen if you have access to the screen to see what we're going to explore, but basically just kind of talk about the terms of pacing and exertion and the concept of nourishment and going over a different framework, and then just recognizing collective wisdom that exists within one area, but how it can be applicable to so many different individuals that are experiencing what we are collectively seeing in the world right now, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to put Steph, your background up, and then, yeah, if you want to just kind of take it away. Hi, Cheryl.
Sure.
Hi, Serena.
Well, welcome everybody, and thanks again for having me back. I'm so
Absolutely.
appreciative that you were open to that because there's so much, I think, to talk about with this. I know we just sort of kind of touched on it last time, just this idea of um, part of the adjustment for so many of us who, end up chronically ill or disabled in some way is this concept of having to slow down and pacing and how rough that can be if you're, anything like me who has been a very go, go, go kind of probably described as type A sort of person who's involved in a lot of things, has a lot of irons in the fire when suddenly your baseline energy goes from here to here and there's kind of no getting it back and you have to learn to manage life with just this much. It's a major adjustment for people. And so part of why I am so appreciative that you had me back to talk about this in July as well is that it's Disability Pride Month. And so wanted to kind of frame it in that way that so much of this adjustment has been from the wisdom and supported by the disability and chronic illness communities and the people who go before us and have figured out some of these things and some of these, I don't want to call it like tips and tricks, but sort of in terms of how to get by. And so I certainly didn't come by all of this on my own. This is kind of part of this collective wisdom, but it seems really relevant not only to this community, to people who are, living with chronic illnesses or disabilities where you have like dynamic um, abilities depending on the day or the hour
Or the minute even
or the minute.
sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
let's be real.
Right.
But also I think it's understanding that this applies to people who are neurodivergent, who have different ways of moving through the world, for whom things impact them differently, for people who are experiencing burnout when that energy and capacity gets really reduced, or maybe it's more of like a short-term post uh, or acute infection or post surgery, or it's more like a short-term disability. It's not maybe long-term, but uh, there's a lot of different ways that this applies to people outside of the community. And I've been hearing and feeling from folks that I don't know if we need to be at the point of burnout, but just kind of living in the modern world, in the society that we're in, with everything unfolding how it is, it's taking a lot, really taking
Yeah.
a lot out of people to try to just keep up. So I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of frame it in that way, that this wisdom comes from this community, but I think it's really applicable to so many different people.
Yeah. And you know, the way I think the word that I heard that really resonated there was that adjustment. It's really adjusting
Yeah.
to how fast things are moving and how much like things are really getting thrown at
Hmm.
us too. And
Hmm.
as I mean, human beings by nature, we adapt to things. I mean, that's how stress works, right?
Yeah.
Biologically, we
Yeah.
adapt. Yet
Hmm.
at the same time, we're not built to adjust and accommodate 24/7. We need a
Yes.
recovery period, right?
Yes.
And I've talked about this before, with when it comes to stress, that it is that, we can go through a stressful period and then at the same time we do need to honor the fact that our bodies need to recover from that. And
Yeah.
yet oftentimes what happens, and like what you are describing, is that we're not doing that, and we're finding ourselves that we are continuously having to meet these demands, and
Yeah.
accommodate and adapt and adjust to it. And the adjustment, it is then what causes us to use up that
Yeah.
energy and become
Yeah.
more depleted much more
Yeah.
quickly than what we expected to. And I can relate, as someone who has a hidden disability, because I've talked about, having chronic pain and chronic fatigue before and have had it now for, since early 2000s. And so I've learned how to manage my own too. But yet,
Hmm.
20 years ago, we didn't really talk about this kind of stuff, and there wasn't a lot of
Hmm.
research about it. And so having my own kind of ways of adapting with it and learning how to live with it, it's really been um, fascinating to me in a very weird way, to say it that way, that it's like just kind of seeing how people are adjusting to having long COVID, and
Hmm.
recognizing that, oh yes, okay, I know about this way because that's something I've had to also learn how to do in my own energy depletion stuff. So I
Hmm.
hear all that, and I find it kind of refreshing too that there is space for that, and that it's
Yeah.
applicable for many people as well, that we don't have to limit, that information
Hmm.
in a way. So I think that's awesome. So yeah, let's talk about this notion of pacing.
Hmm.
Yes.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think at the base level, there can be this kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Idiom about like, oh, just pace yourself. Like it's the simple little thing that people throw out there, like, oh, just pace yourself, it's fine. And it's really actually quite difficult to just pace yourself. And so I think we're working against, again, like it might be some kind of innate wiring where some of us are just kind of a little more have a preference for doing more and having a lot of irons in the fire and doing a lot of things. But we're also, let's be honest, like socially conditioned to be achieving, performing, doing more, keeping up. That gets rewarded. And so when it comes to pacing, we're probably fighting some social conditioning. We're probably fighting some very real expectations of people, of bosses, of family members, of whomever. Um, and oftentimes some internalized ableism of like, I should just be able to, or if I try harder, I can make all of these things happen. And sometimes that's just really, really not the case. And
Right.
so when we're talking about pacing, I want to be really just clear off the bat that it's not a simple thing. So
Right.
none of these concepts am I being like, oh, just practice this in 7 days and you'll be all, it is not by any means that
It's
simple.
not. It
Not.
takes a while, right? Yes,
Which
yes,
you know that from experience
totally.
that it's trial and error, and just
Yes,
as soon as you maybe get a handle on what your body's doing, something changes, surprise, and it's not that predictable either. And
right.
so really, really want to name up front if this is something somebody's working on, hearing this and thinking, oh yeah, that seems relevant, all of the self-compassion in this process, because it is not simple. There's a lot of things working against us, and it's very complex. But that said, I want to give like a couple different kind of frameworks that exist for pacing, and some people might have heard of these, but the first is called spoon theory, which is a really shorthand kind of I forget who's responsible for this, but somebody was trying to explain how their chronic illness limits their energy to a friend.
Mhm.
And they were sitting at a cafe, and there was just a caddy of silverware, and so she picked up the all the spoons in the thing and said, "Okay, so here's all my spoons for the day. Two goes to a shower, two goes to getting dressed, one goes to answering an email. I only have two left for the rest of the day." Like it's understanding that some people do not get the same amount of spoons in their day, and so recognizing that some of those exertions throughout the day are going to need to be something's going to give, something's got to give somewhere. You can't just keep doing and keep doing. And those of us with very real conditions will feel how we pay for that later. Um,
Yeah.
so that's one of the kind of, you hear people talk about spoon theory, that's where that comes from and what that means. The other one that gets talked about a lot is it's like traffic light or stoplight. And the understanding is to be paying attention to which activities in your life are green light, being that you can do them and it's fine and you don't have to have any consequences later, or which activities are more yellow light. You kind of got a plan to scale back activities for the rest of your day to make it not really impact your baseline level of functioning, or red light activities, which are the whoops, that was too much. That really laid me out for a week afterwards. I should really not be doing so much in that kind of way. And so there's other models out there, but just to kind of give a couple metaphors, couple frameworks for understanding when we talk about pacing, it's looking at ways to do and balance, as elusive as that is, the things that we're trying to do, the things that matter to us, things we need to do, and understanding where we might need to offset those expenditures with rest, with maybe it's not all or nothing. It's not completely taking something off your plate. It's maybe scaling back. It's not socializing for 3 hours. It's socializing for 1 hour or
Right.
something along those lines.
Yeah.
But that does that kind of give a good enough overview?
Yeah, and I think, well, just to kind of cement that too with an example as well,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of looks like, I mean, one way that I have kind of described it with clients sometimes, it's like, it's kind of like when you're driving a car, it's not simply just driving a car. You are
Yeah.
expending energy while you may not necessarily be conscious, aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain still takes up energy to pay attention to cues so that you are
Mm-hmm.
avoiding an accident. You're paying attention
Yep.
to signals. You're aware of cars around you. I mean, all of that stuff takes up energy, which can also be very physically exerting to your system. And so if you're
Yeah.
driving a long distance or driving to work, for example, and then you go to work and you're spending so many hours in a day at work, you're taking up a lot of cognitive energy, and you're
Yeah.
physically present there and whatnot. Those are all different energies that are
Exactly.
exerting your spoons, one, or
Mm-hmm.
two, just kind of like your bank account. You're kind of draining.
Yeah.
That's another model that I've heard is kind of thinking of it as money in your bank account for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're withdrawing that money or the energy coins from your bank account, and after a period of time you're not going to have enough to drive home being as present as you were driving to
Yeah.
work, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So just to give an example of what that might look like for people who, because it's like, I think people don't really recognize sometimes how much energy it does take
Yes.
when we're not like fully aware
Yes.
of what is involved in driving or working. There's a physical sense, there's a cognitive sense, there's an emotional piece to it. And all of those different realms take up its own energy from whatever reservoir we have. And
Mm-hmm.
for individuals, that are chronically stressed or are experiencing a lot of different demands at once, you're essentially spending energy on these things that you don't know about, and then you get mad because you're like, why am I spending this energy on this? Because it's not doing it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you said that because that's exactly what um, I mentioned last time I went and spoke to a long COVID support group, and this is what we talked about was it's not just the physical exertions. People will be like, well, I stopped like going to the gym and doing like the big heavy workouts and whatever. Why can't I just sit and read a book? Surprise. Like that actually, if you have limited energy, if your cognition is impacted by any of these things, you're
Right.
experiencing burnout, that actually is a major draw on your stores. And so it is that frustration of I don't even feel like I'm doing that much. Why is it
Right.
so exhausting to just even
Yes.
watch a TV show? I have found at times that I really have to be cognizant of the type of TV shows or movies that I'm
Yes.
watching. Like if they're those, I love like action thriller,
Yes.
psychological kind of, but I can't always handle them. And that's
Yes.
a real disappointment for
Yes.
real. Like it's
Yes.
so annoying. And same with, let's talk about the news and social media, how much
Oof.
just sitting and scrolling and like passively consuming, we don't recognize those are, taking emotional processing.
Yeah.
And if we're having emotional reactions or starting to worry about these things, then they're kind of in the background even after we stop scrolling. And so it's kind of draining in the background before we even know
Oh yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And just with that comment too, people don't recognize too that anytime you take in new information as well, like I'm thinking about, this notion of when you're scrolling social media and you're watching a video, perhaps, something you've never seen before, or some new concept that you've never heard before, you're watching a video of someone doing something that's new for you. Your brain has to use up energy in order to file it somewhere amongst your organizational framework. So
Right.
that takes up energy to do that because the brain now
Mm-hmm.
has to work a little bit more than it usually does to passively
Mm-hmm.
kind of scroll. It now has to take an active role in, oh, this is something I've never been exposed to before. And now I have to figure out where to put this. And so now I
Yeah.
have to go through my 86 billion neurons and figure out which direction to go. So you essentially are giving it more work to do by
Yeah.
doing that. And so it can also take away more energy from you, which is why I've heard like some clients have been like, why is it that I get exhausted when I am scrolling and like I feel more fatigued? Like I've had some clients tell me that
Mm-hmm.
too. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this might be a reason, but
Mm-hmm.
that's something we can work on to kind of look at what patterns are happening for you. So I wanted to just
Yeah.
point that out that a lot of times people don't recognize that your brain uses some of that glucose energy to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which makes all of the sense. Integration is a process. Anytime there's
Right.
processing, there's actual processing happening. Like that's
Right.
coming from it's taking something out of us.
Yes.
And so it is it's not, again, not none of this is with judgment. This is just
Right.
recognition
Totally.
and
Yeah.
reflection of like where is maybe energy going that we're not
Yeah.
realizing. Is it going to if not physical, then maybe mental, emotional, social, and even just sensory experiences for a lot of
Yeah.
people with energy limiting conditions, with long COVID, with even neurodivergence. Sensory experiences can be really draining. So,
Yeah.
wow, 4th of July, anybody else
Oof.
real exhausted from just constant barrage of fireworks in your neighborhood? That would be me and a lot of people that I know. I actually had a really terrible long COVID flare after they were doing work on my building that
Oh, wow.
started at like 7 in the morning, where the at the minute that whatever the code is, you can start doing construction, and it went on for months. And I had a really bad period with my long COVID because I
Oh,
couldn't sleep and it was just constant noise. And so understanding that like auditory, visual, touch, all of those things can actually be draining for some
mm.
people.
Yeah. And
So
that's a really
it's
good point. Sorry, go ahead.
no, nope, no, go ahead.
Well, so I was going to say that's a really good point. I mean, in general, recognizing that sensory overload can be
Hmm.
draining, and it kind of goes to the notion that sometimes just being in silence can be useful, because
Yeah.
there isn't that kind of overload of stimulation. And we are a very distracting society. We are very used to constant distraction and constant,
Hmm.
barrages of visual, auditory, mostly visual and auditory. And yet, when people are sitting in silence, they're like, well, I can't sit still. My brain is like just on. And it's like, well, yes, because you're constantly distracting it. And so it
Hmm.
is going to be about allowing it to just kind of calm itself down. And
Hmm.
eventually it gets to the point where it can be steady. And it
Yeah.
is a practice, basically,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. So it does happen. It just takes time. And I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned that these things are trial and error, because it's not just like
Absolutely.
do it and it's going to work for you,
Yeah.
because it may not the first time or the
Yeah.
second time or the 15th time. Um,
Hmm.
but at some point, you will observe something happening for you.
And
That's,
it might, yeah, it might be trial and error with how to do that. It
yeah,
might be not 100% just sitting still in silence. It might be silence and drawing or filling in,
right.
adult coloring book or something that is
Oh,
like
love those.
giving
Yes.
somewhere for a little bit of that energy. It is using a little bit of energy to sit here and do this, but sometimes it's still filling up the tank if it's useful type of stimulation, which is the other thing. Great segue into the other thing that I want to talk about
Yes.
is um, that it's both recognizing that enriching, enjoyable, I think you call it nourishing, like
Yeah.
those kind of activities are both really important because if we are under under getting that enrichment and enjoyment and the things that fill up the tank, it's going to also be not draining, but like we're not getting enough to fill that tank back up.
Right.
But what's tricky is that those things are also take exertion. It takes exertion to do some of the things that are filling the tank. And so this is where a lot of us end up is like, man, so much of my energy is going to just basic to work, to adult responsibilities, to whatever else. And then I don't have a whole lot left for the things that would be filling the tank.
Yeah.
And that's a real tricky formula. That's a joke to call it a formula, but like it's a real tricky thing to hack. I don't know, of
Yeah.
how to balance things when there are so many very real demands on our time. And so it's acknowledging again all of the self-compassion that you might need to do some trial and error with like what are the little ways that you can rest, be doing some of what you're wanting,
Right.
but paying attention to how you feel afterwards and maybe adjusting if you're not getting enough of what you're needing.
Yeah.
Um, or yeah, the thing I wanted to also kind of touch on is the way in which I've experienced from people I've experienced with long COVID, and I'm hearing from a lot of people with long COVID. I think this applies in other conditions as well, but I know it applies at least when I have been burnt out as well, is there's this idea of, well, if I exert all my physical like, energy, at least I can still maybe read a book or do something mentally stimulating.
Mm,
Or I still have some social energy, so I can still go out and see a friend for coffee. That is really not the
right.
case for a
Yeah.
lot of us anymore. It
Yeah.
is instead of thinking of those as discrete, separate, like, oh, I drained all my physical, but I've still got full everything else. It's understanding that a lot of the times they drain together now. And
Yeah.
so if you're doing a lot physically, this has been a real hard learning curve. Is like if I'm doing a lot socially, I don't have the physical energy
Yeah.
to do stuff around the house or to do some of
Right.
those things that I might want to go get out and do. And that just understanding those are can be all connected for people
Yeah.
really trips people up and takes some time to relearn how to pace if that's the case.
Yeah, and I have also discovered too that a lot of times when I'm working with people, well, and also just my own way of learning when I was learning this for myself is that, that self-compassion is very important. And of course, that was not a concept 20 years ago. So it's more recent, of course. And
Hmm.
so it was so much of me, like I just remember doing it harder, not being smarter about it, just doing it harder. Right. And so
Yeah.
now it is really about, just seeing what happens, trying something different, see what happens, assess where your energy is basically,
Hmm.
and just allow yourself to observe what happens for
Hmm.
you so that you get some data about, okay, when
Hmm.
I don't do these particular things on the same day, what do I notice about my energy levels and how am I
Yeah.
feeling at the end of the day where I may want to do this other thing that's really important to me to do. So because in it, like with pacing, it is really about being very intentional with how you manage a schedule and what you're scheduling together and
Yep.
what you're doing on the same day. Like I know that for myself, at least, I've really had to be very intentional about activities that I schedule on the same day. Like I don't
Yep.
schedule things on days that I, you know, go physically to campus. I
Hmm.
don't do anything else on those days because I know those are not days that I will have enough energy to do my job efficiently.
Yep.
And so it's really about, okay, I have to pace that. So how then do I do all those other activities that need to be taken care of? And that's, again, it's going to be look different for everybody.
Exactly.
So, but that's like an example of what you're talking about as well.
Absolutely. It's there's multiple ways to pace. There's also like micro pacing of
Yes.
like doing I can't even really get into micro pacing right now for time, but like there's lots of different ways to pace. And I think you're bringing up a really important one that is I think it's gonna maybe have the biggest bang for your buck to do things like what you're describing of figuring out which things can and can't go on the same day.
Yeah.
I realized I did basically after tracking
Uh,
long enough realized I like that, which also recommend tracking so it's not just not remembering how things go, like
right.
keep notes for yourself. But with enough tracking, I basically realized I've got about on a good day, on a very good day, I've got 4 usable hours. That's it. And
Yeah.
so I don't schedule more clients than that. And I
Yeah.
know 4 days a week I'm working, and the other 3 days a week I'm either doing chores around the house or
Yeah.
running errands or doing whatever else. They cannot happen on the same day. And
Right.
I work from home. So those 4 hours are only if I don't leave the house. Like
Yeah.
it's really learning how and where to scale back. And
Yeah.
I want to name, there's so much grief in that. There's so much
Yes.
grief in that. That
Yes.
also takes exertion to process. So
Yes. It
it's coming
does.
at us from all angles, which is
Yes.
why just really, really stress that self-compassion piece.
Yes, and recognizing that because it is a loss. I mean,
Absolutely.
like you, type A, totally. I admit that, and I still try to reinforce that sometimes, and then try to be like, oh no, gotta just kind of reframe that type A
Yeah.
piece, and at the
Yeah.
same time recognizing that what is going to be the best use of my energy and my time, and how is it that I can still meet and do things that are important to me and still contributing to what I need to contribute to, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that took a long time to figure out. And luckily I had some great people in my life, both therapy and other support systems in place to help with that. But it's not something you could do alone. I think that's important also to mention here is that,
Mhm.
something like this is it's recommended and suggested to have someone
Mhm.
who understands that to
Yeah.
work with you just to get some guidance with it, and also to have people around you that are supportive of that, that
Mhm.
recognize that this might be something you are going to be working through,
Mhm.
and can also offer support with it and not try to push you when you are not
Yes.
needing to be pushed in that
Yeah.
direction, because, that can kind of be, what's the word?
Counterproductive.
Counterproductive. I was thinking anticlimactic, but that's not the word that I was looking.
Mhm.
Counterproductive. Yes, that could be
Mhm.
counterproductive. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, so I think that's really an important point, because there is grief involved in recognizing that you are not the same as you were.
Yeah. Yep.
You, yeah, and that kind of, for lack of a better term, sucks sometimes, but
Truly. Mhm.
yeah, it does. Yeah. So we have like a minute left. Let's see, we knew this was going to happen. So,
Mhm.
um, what, any other last words that you would like to share, in terms of, for our listeners, or if anybody has a question or any comments that anybody wants to offer before we wrap up?
Yeah, I welcome that. If there's any questions, otherwise, I am planning to start offering a workshop to go over this. I don't have a date yet, but you can check out my website at Misfit Mental Health if that's something that you're interested in, because I do think it does help to have somebody kind of walk through this a little bit more detailed, slow it down, get into the nitty gritty, and see where maybe we could make some positive changes for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And once I have the date, I will also post it on my website as part of the link for
Great.
this podcast episode, so people also know where to access it. And that way, it's in a couple different places. And Linda, I see your hand is up. Yes, you're on mute too. I don't know if you can hear me, but you are on mute.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh,
Um, so I don't have any chronic illness, but I definitely could relate to this. Um, getting a little older. Yeah,
Sure.
I do lament the fact that I don't have the energy that I used to. And I actually thought the other day, I need to Google search, now that I'm older, how can I regain some of my energy? So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's an issue. But Steph, what did you say your website is again?
oh.
It was up on the slide, but it is misfitmentalhealth.com.
Okay, thanks.
Misfit.
Yep,
I'm
you're
gonna
very
type it
welcome.
in the chat really quick. Misfit mental. Oh my gosh, if I can spell. See, mm, misfitmentalhealth.com. So it's an abbreviated version. There's no www, but it is misfitmentalhealth.com. And Judy, welcome. I'm so glad you were able to make it. And what a timely topic for you too.
Yes, thank you. I've
You are
enjoyed
welcome.
tonight. Namaste, both of you.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And for those of you that are watching live stream, if you do have questions, by all means, please reach out. You have my email as well and know how to contact me. And Steph, again, thank you so much for being here and welcome. And, you are always welcomed back. So anytime that you want to, come back and talk about these topics, I am open invitation
Thank you
by
so
all
much.
means.
Thanks for
Yes.
having me
Thank
back.
you. All right, thanks everyone. In 2 weeks, so just to mention too, August is Happens Month. So